Negotiations to end Russia's war against Ukraine have effectively failed. Putin issued an ultimatum, Trump acknowledged it, and Ukraine is responding to this ultimatum. No! The main formula of the day is Putin's statement in which he issued an ultimatum, and if it is not fulfilled, he will continue the war. The British Broadcasting Corporation reports, citing Putin's statements in China, if common sense prevails, an agreement can be reached now. If not, everything must be settled militarily. This is a quote from Putin. Next are conditions we've already heard, but it's important to note them exactly as he stated. Territorial questions in Ukraine can be settled by referendum, but martial law must first be lifted. If Zelenskyy is ready, let him come to Moscow. Such a meeting will take place. The ultimatum is simple. End the war, come to Moscow, discuss territories through local referendums only this way. If not, then go back. The war will continue anyway. So let's analyze together today the main statements from Moscow, from Kiev, from Washington. Because Trump, in fact, stated that he doesn't intend to mock Putin. He did all he could, but the negotiations failed. So, well, it's time to just step aside and watch. That's a quote. Trump says he'll keep watching. My name is Alexei Pechi. Today is September 6th on the calendar, and before we start this episode, I want to make a small confession. From being overwhelmed by the news, from constantly working with the newsfeed, once a week I pour my heart out to a psychologist just so I don't burn out. If you need a gentle daily push to take action, I want to recommend a good YouTube channel where every day there are short videos from a psychologist about how to get out of procrastination, gather your thoughts, and avoid burnout. And not just that, it's a normal practical tone without, any pseudo-guru stuff. That's why I recommend this YouTube channel. I'll leave the link in the description of this video, and I suggest you subscribe and save a couple of videos to watch again.
Boundaries aren't about being cold. They're about being honest. You don't have to be available all the time to be loved. Subtitle editor.
So, I'll start with Kiev's response with Volodymyr Zelenskyy's answer, who immediately replied that we don't need meetings just for show, and there will be no trips to Moscow. Volodymyr Zelenskyy's stance, reported by top Ukrainian media, is that the president of Ukraine refused negotiations in Moscow. Here meaning matters more than form. No referendum at gunpoint, no lifting of martial law just to make a deal right now, no legalization of occupation through fake ballots. This isn't about toughness for its own sake or taking a stance just to have one. It's a lesson from the Minsk agreements. Any paper compromises without such a forceful framework are just a pause before a new war. Where does Donald Trump fit in? This is where it gets interesting. The Telegraph conveys his position in the most cynical way possible, but unfortunately, honestly, Trump is not going to mock Putin. He won't publicly humiliate him just for a photo opportunity. If there is peace, it will be the kind that can be sold to both sides. This is a direct quote from the Telegraph article, and it is specifically attached to the ultimatum from Moscow. We've given you our terms, now the ball is in your court and in the Americans, who it turns out don't want to humiliate Vladimir Putin. So, to put it in plain language, the United States president is not ready to pressure the Kremlin publicly. He wants to make some kind of quiet deal, but the Kremlin is offering for Ukraine to surrender. Nice. Well, that's a dead end. And on this subject, analysts from the Institute for the Study of War are writing today, Putin's new demands show his unwillingness for real negotiations. Why? Because all these referendums under occupation and the lifting of martial law are not the start of peace, they are the start of capitulation. And the Institute for the Study of War has analyzed many times how the Kremlin uses pseudo-legal mechanisms to consolidate the seizure of territory and then completely nullifies any policy by force. That is, with a new war and a new wave of escalation. Today everyone just said it, and all reasonable people already get it. What are the consequences of Donald Trump basically refusing to put pressure on Putin? Here's an interesting episode. The thing is, another deadline that Donald Trump set for Putin to reach a peace agreement expired back on September 1. So when Trump was asked, what about the deadline? Has it expired? Where are the sanctions? Where are the secondary tariffs? Where is the strike? Where, as you stated, is the change of position, the change of tactics toward Moscow? Where is all of that? Trump replied, listen, let's wait and see. Well, we have some progress, which of course we can't show you, but it does exist. I'm disappointed in Putin, but let's wait and see. And now Trump is suggesting we wait and see. Trump ended up being a pushover who won't take responsibility for his words. I'm saying this publicly now. Well, instead of responding, they're directly asking him, where is everything? You made serious threats, so where is it? Rather than answering, listen, I miscalculated and made a mistake. He says, no, you don't understand. You're nitpicking the wrong thing. We'll just keep watching how the war continues. Regarding the consequences, for Ukraine, this whole situation means two things. The first is that we need to keep pressing our European partners to ensure that security guarantees are truly ironclad. If Paris declared that 26 countries are ready to offer security guarantees and there are no limits on Ukraine's defense, Ukraine should now clarify which countries will provide air defense, manage repairs, handle logistics, and be responsible for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And all of this needs to be turned into contracts and bases ratified by parliaments. A truce with teeth only works when there are actual batteries and people behind it. The second is the logic of sanctions. The price cap on Russian oil is $47.6 per barrel. That's good, but it needs to be lower. We need to intensify the hunt for the shadow fleet, because today there is news that China has openly started accepting Russian tankers from the shadow fleet that have come under Western sanctions. China is basically telling Vladimir Putin that if he can't send tankers to the West, he can send them to China instead. There should be bans on docks and insurance to apply coordinated pressure on Russia's budget. If China has decided to accept these tankers, then China should be targeted as well. An ultimatum is always a bet on time and money, so you need to hit both resources, both money and time. For the United States, this is a pivotal moment. Well, either the White House, represented by Donald Trump, admits that the deal didn't happen within 24 hours, and starts shifting to an engineering approach, focusing on air defense, logistics, intelligence, or Trump keeps playing this game. Volodya Putin should never be humiliated. And then just watch as Moscow puts the responsibility for the delay, for the hold-up, specifically on Trump. And for some reason, Trump is pressuring the Europeans to stop buying Russian oil and to put pressure on China. That's fair. After that, Europeans no longer expect him to sanction Russia. That's an honest summary. There are words, but no leverage. For the Kremlin, it's a dilemma, an ultimatum, or even war, in my view. Of course, it's a nice stance when you have the resources to continue this war. When you know there are problems with oil, when the price cap on Russian oil is lowered, when transportation becomes more expensive due to insurance and port filters, this stance becomes quite costly. And here we return to engineering. The faster Europe creates a security framework in Ukraine, the costlier any attempt to break the truce by force will be. Unfortunately, today is not a breakthrough toward peace. It's an honest admission the negotiations failed. Because one side is proposing some referendums under occupation, Moscow as the place for negotiations, and the other side, meaning the United States of America, is not ready to humiliate the Kremlin in order, in their opinion, to quietly extract some concessions. But this is a very strange position from Donald Trump, who doesn't want to humiliate Putin. Putin has already humiliated him more than once. Let me remind you, yesterday Putin made a statement where he said that no one has yet discussed the issue of Ukraine with Russia at a serious level. I remind you, Putin met with Trump in Alaska, and after that Putin says, listen, no one has yet discussed the issue of Ukraine with us at a serious level. This means that he puts Trump in such a position that he is nobody, that he is not a serious negotiator. Once again, seriously, on a serious level, according to Putin, no one has spoken with them yet. Well, and Trump gets offended, puffs out his cheeks and says, oh, we lost Russia and India, China took them over, let them have luck now in their alliance. Well, that's such an offended pose, and it's also self-humiliation. So probably it's worth stating that after 7 months of Donald Trump's presidency, we've ended up rolling back to the very same negotiating position we had before his presidency. There is absolutely no progress, no matter what the American president says. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions, as usual, in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.